Let's get a thumbs up from the live stream people. I've been great. I got a thumbs up. I can't do this. Great, thank you. You can do that. Hi to everyone. My name is Michael Wheeler. I'm one of the 3 co-curators of FoLDA, the Festival of Live Digital Art, along with Adrian Wong and Marcel Stewart. And we're here at Ingenuity Labs in physical form, and hello to our live stream audience for day 3 of the startup. And these are laser talks. I will let Adrian speak more to what that's about, but I just wanted to shout out the folks that make this possible. So our partners on the startup are Sensorium, Ingenuity Labs, thank you so much for having us here, and of course the Connected Minds CFREF. And I just wanted to note, thanks Connected Minds for making this live stream available to everyone. And actually we just noted this morning that there's 3 Connected Minds PhD trainees that are involved in different ways. So Eric Garton is here, and he is a PhD trainee working with Dr. Matthew Pan on a project called Metaphysical Theater that uses VR and robotics to explore haptics, I guess is the shortest version of this project we're all working on here at Spiderweb Show. And then Laurel Green is also here as part of the festival, and she's Dr. Laura Levin's trainee. And then we also have Shabnam Sukhdev here, and she is working with Mary Bunch, and she's making a documentary about the festival. So great to have all those trainees involved in the festival. I will throw it to Adrian Wong.
Thanks very much. I'm Adrian Wong. I'm one of the co-curators of FoLDA and the startup. The Laser Talk session this morning is an opportunity for us to hear from our colleagues who are artists, technologists, thinkers, about what they're working on. So we're calling them Laser Talks because they're sharp, they're short, they're focused, they're burning hot. And we have 5 different topics this morning and 6 different speakers. So you'll see how that rolls out. So my job is going to be to come in and introduce you to each of the speakers before they speak. And then I'm going to be presenting very short bios. So if you are curious about these folks and what they are up to, please check out folda.ca. The makers page has all of the full bios for everyone involved in the festival. There'll be maybe time, depending how people do with their 15 minutes, there might be time for questions afterwards. And I'm just gonna be on the clock. All right. So first, I'm going to invite up Shabnam Sukhdev. As Michael mentioned, Shabnam and her team are filmmakers in residence here at FoLDA 2025. Shabnam is an interdisciplinary artist, scholar, and filmmaker, and her PhD studies are supported by Connected Minds. Shabnam, come on up.
Thanks for coming out this morning after this excellent performance 2021 last night. I couldn't sit through the whole performance because I thought I will not sleep after that. So I had to prepare for this.
All right.
Yeah?
Go for it. And the microphone is here.
And
You're just going to hit present.
oh, yeah.
Bring it back. I'm going to hit present, the button that I showed you earlier.
Where's it gone?
It went off to the right side here. So just hit present here.
Present and go back.
Yep. There you go. Right. And next.
All right, great. Yeah, so as you already know, my name is Shabnam Sukhdev, and I come to this work as a documentary filmmaker, performance artist, and a daughter. This project is rooted in my body, shaped by intergenerational grief, migration, and a deep commitment to storytelling as resistance. Embodied code is not only a theoretical exploration, it is a personal and political response to how systems, especially artificial intelligence, abstract, extract, and erase voices from the margins. As a woman of color, is that me? I don't know. As a woman of color, working with memory, trauma, and performance, I ask, what is lost when machines are trained on histories they don't understand? and what might be possible if feminist, subaltern, and decolonial voices were centered in these processes. We live in a time where large language models claim to know everything. But what does it mean to contextualize, to feel, to embody knowledge? Performance offers us another code, one rooted not in efficiency, but in care and rupture. Oh, I'm already on this slide. Okay, AI codes us, categorizes us, but can we in return code back with our bodies? So embodied code, in a sense, is a refusal. It's the assertion that our bodies and their stories, traumas, contradictions cannot be captured by the cold logic of AI. Feminist performance through masking, storytelling, and movement offers an analog, affective counter-technology to this digital regime. What happens when we center the body as a site of knowledge and resistance? I explore embodied practices such as storytelling, masking, archival performance, methods that refuse to be flattened into categories. These practices aren't just metaphors, they are technologies of resistance. The question I pose is, can performance itself be a feminist counter-technology in the age of AI? My performance framework draws on feminist and decolonial thinkers. Judith Butler reminds us that gender and identity is performed. It is never fixed. Spivak challenges us by asking, can the subaltern speak? I ask, what would happen if she doesn't speak? What if performance allows subaltern bodies to evade capture, not through speech, but through embodied opacity? What if she performs, masks, dances, mourns, and in doing so reclaims a space beyond translation or classification? Audre Lorde insists your silence will not protect you. For Lorde, voice and visibility are not merely expressive acts. They are political imperatives. Embodied code speaks to the radical necessity of speaking from the body, especially when systems of power prefer silence, neutrality, or erasure. Lorde's work reminds us that survival requires naming our experiences, even when the language is not ready to hold them. To move or to glitch, as we saw in Marcel's performance, can also be forms of speaking. While algorithmic systems thrive on clarity and classification, feminist performance insists on ambiguity, multiplicity, contradiction. It is messy, and that's its strength. Performance in this framework becomes an insurgent act, a rejection of algorithmic capture. So I use autoethnography as both a lens and a methodology. My digital performances are my experiments to map how memory, grief, and identity circulate through the body. By embedding myself, my mother, my lineage into the narrative, I push back against AI's impersonal gaze. These are not polished narratives. They are desire lines. Desire lines are pathways people naturally create by repeatedly taking a direct route, often bypassing designated paths. Desire lines are unofficial, embodied paths we carve when official routes fail us. These embodied pathways are intuitive, affective routes that refuse to follow algorithmic order. The body knows another way. These performances aren't structured like code. They unfold through touch, silence, memory, rupture. In this way, embodiment becomes a kind of code breaking, a reprogramming of what AI cannot compute: care, rage, kinship, grief, love. The clip we're about to see centers the mother, my mother. She becomes the anchor not as a subject of trauma, but as a living archive. It's going to show you my creation process in a sense. I adopt the aesthetics of device theater, autobiographical narrative, and improvisation. So I need to get out of this so I can show you my clip.
Yes. All right. Now let me just open that up.
Yeah. And the audio is correct, right?
Yep.
And play it.
I'm just gonna.
You have to play it first.
I'm just gonna make it full screen. Make sure it's on.
Let's run.
Let's run, yeah.
Let's
Okay.
do sections. If the tech isn't ready yet, let's run sections.
Really? No,
Yeah.
I don't want you to get exhausted. I
No,
like the
Shabnam.
spontaneity of it.
Yeah.
So be in the moment. I don't care.
Okay,
I want you to be in the moment because it will work much better.
sure.
I started working on this piece as a solo performance in which I wanted to have a conversation with my mother.
See the camera how it looks.
Over time, it became a deep dive into our respective lives, going back in time, going back generations.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Get it?
yeah. It's great.
It's a form I'm experimenting with for the first time.
And then you can just do this. And when you're looking in the mirror, it could be this. You know, I don't know how that looks, but
As I showed my mother some of my edited material, she started sharing with me about my grandfather's gambling habits. Sorry that I betrayed your trust. I was all you had. You were in bed, recovering from a flu.
I, Gina, 12 years old, promise that I will never get married. You, my parents, promise me that you will never force me to marry ever, no matter how old I get. I had no choice that day. I went out to buy vegetables so that I could prepare a hearty soup for you. But I tricked you instead. You called it jailbreak marriage, Mama. You never forgave me. That's because I never felt sorry for what I did. We never talked about it, did we? He had told me, your mother will never let you go. Not with me or any other man. The only way you can get out of that house is if you get married or if she dies. A new document had taken the place of the one I had guarded with my life. Mother, I am so sorry that I hurt you. So sorry for what I did to myself. So sorry that it had to end this way.
So, what do I do now to gather these truant memories? Evasive and elusive, but showing up unexpectedly, grabbing me unawares, just like now. Never trust men. They say one thing, but mean another. He has loved many before me. Mother had warned me.
I would rather die than go back to him. I cried for days. He would come chasing after me and beg for forgiveness, make promises. Please, Nikki, I don't know what comes over me. Please come home. I can't live without you. We couldn't have enough of each other. Wow, it wasn't jailbreak marriage. No, Mother, he's not into men. No, he loves me. I had found love at last.
Steady now. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I am Gina.
Go back to him. I think if we just open it, it's on the last slide. Just go to the last. Yeah. Great. So, okay, this is not a conclusion. It's a call to all artists and technologists who are present here, activists, coders, caregivers, witnesses, to all of us shaped by and resisting the algorithmic gaze. Embodied code asks, what stories will we tell in bodies that AI cannot predict? Thank you.
And thank you, Shabnam. We have a couple minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I was really struck by this idea of that the body is something that resists code, that we are not zeros or ones, and that the information that we're able to give to each other through our bodies, our gestures, our voices, is something that resists kind of quantification in some ways. You've got to come over here. Come over here.
I'm trying to break into this. I'm Alice in Wonderland, in the wonderland of artificial intelligence. And I don't want to train it. I want it to understand me and reflect that understanding back to me. So I'm actually looking for collaborations. My son is a coder, but he doesn't want to do anything with me. So I'm looking for, and he's brilliant, but I'm looking for somebody who, someone who could show me the way, that try this, try that, learn this, learn that, and I'm happy to do that. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, Gunnar, I saw your hand was up, so I'm going to bring the microphone over to you because we are live streaming.
Yeah, thank you so much for this thought-provoking presentation. I just wanted to comment real quickly that I think both in the neuroscience and in the AI community, people have realized that the current AI models really lack this embodiment component, right? And the latest pushes are really like going towards that and trying to sort of like, you know, put the body, put the environment, the interaction between the body, the environment, and the brain or the artificial intelligence system back together. And many people think that that will sort of like enable the next big step forward, both in terms of our understanding of neuroscience and the brain, but also in terms of building better AI models.
Yes, and that's my hope. And I hope it happens in my lifetime, that's all.
Thank you, Shabnam. Thank you, Gunnar. So our next presenter is Ronnie Cheng. Ronnie, I'd like to invite you to come up and set up your setup, and I'll move to the side here and read some bio information. Excuse me. It's all about navigating screens today. So Ronnie is an interdisciplinary queer Hong Konger artist whose primary mediums are lens-based art, animation, and new media installations. Oh, and creative writing. Their work has been screened at festivals globally and exhibited in galleries across Western Canada. And Ronnie, we're very happy to have you here.
For the movement commissioned artist. Yeah, I'm based on the unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, colonially known as Vancouver. And I'll be presenting this project of mine titled "The Light Will Take You Home," Choi Gong Tam Ga. And yeah, my project actually has like some parallels with Shabnam, so that's quite cool. So just a bit of backstory on myself and the project. So I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I left for university at the age of 18 for university in the States. Until about a year and a half afterwards when the 2019 Hong Kong protests happened, and my parents decided to leave Hong Kong, obviously because of the political state of Hong Kong. And so I had to take a pause on school and return to Hong Kong, help them pack up, and basically shove all of my childhood belongings into 3 suitcases. And we moved here to Canada, and this all coincided with the peak of the pandemic, so travel was even harder. And like moving with all your belongings in suitcases was even harder. And so in the span of 4 years, I had 15 different living spaces, and so I was bouncing around all sorts of places. And eventually, when my parents were settled in Vancouver, I transferred to UBC in Kelowna to finish my degree. In case people don't know, Kelowna is like a 5-hour drive away from Vancouver towards the east. And so yeah, throughout all of this, I always had questions like, what does home mean? How do I navigate my complicated relationship with Hong Kong as a queer person? While also having this deep love and care for Hong Kong. And when a home that you once knew and loved begins to fade and dissolve in your personal memory, and also just in terms of the state of how it is, what is home? So when it came time to create a capstone project for my degree, I was doing a Bachelor of Media Studies. I decided to create this project, and obviously it was my last year in university, so I was also feeling the feelings of graduation, and you know, the plan was always for me to join my parents in Vancouver after graduation, so I knew that there was another move coming up, and obviously it's a very different context than, you know, moving from Hong Kong here. But as it often is with trauma, you know, these feelings still arise, and I was feeling a lot of panic. So this project was kind of my way of processing past migration trauma and also preparing for another migration. So a text that really informed this piece was Sarah Ahmed's Queer Phenomenology, who Ahmed argues that to be oriented is to be turned or to turn towards certain objects that help us find our way. And we feel at home when we're oriented. So a queer orientation is to deviate from the paths that have been laid out for us and to deliberately choose a path that is perhaps more disorienting, but is one that we can still eventually reorient ourselves towards. And Ahmed also describes migration as a queer and disorienting experience. So lots of relevant themes here. And essentially encourages people to embrace this disorientation and to break away from existing paths that have been laid out for us. So really what I was trying to answer for myself was, how do we feel at peace with repeatedly going back and forth between disorientation and reorientation? Because, you know, this bouncing back and forth between comfort and discomfort is not just something to do with migration, it's, you know, just a normal part of life, right? And so, yeah, I created a projected installation piece, which used 2 walls, crane and corner, and I suspended 3 layers of sheer fabric from the ceiling. There were 2 speakers used to play a soundscape, and again, 2 projectors, each directly projecting onto a wall. Here it is. It was almost entirely created with Blender, which is a free and open source software for 3D modeling and animation. And I also used Touch Designer for projection mapping and coordinating the different medias that are involved. So in the animation, walking through streets of Hong Kong, through a street market, and you'd hear all of the sounds that you typically hear in the street market, and eventually turns into a road lined with skyscrapers and neon lights. And all this starts to crumble down and dissolve, and you start to hear sounds of protests, sirens, and then it all eventually fades away. And in the darkness, you just hear heavy breathing, a heartbeat, and it's quite long, so I won't actually show the full thing. But eventually, some sparkles of light come up, and you see the sparkles form into white flowers. And in Chinese, the white flower symbolizes the concept of guanzi, which means good people or people who are good for us. And these flowers form a path amongst grass, and eventually the path turns into a desired path into a more bright future, essentially. And these kind of move between the two walls. So there are a couple of things I want to point out with this project. Number one is the parallels between installation arts and migration. When I think about migration, I think about a loss of space, specifically a loss of access to a space that I'm so familiar with. And there's all this muscle memory that I have of navigating a space that I can no longer use. And installation art is essentially the act of making a space your own. So when both are such spatial experiences and both involve the act of physically orienting yourself, I find it interesting to pair migration narratives with this medium. And number two is the potentials of animation. I love animation. As a queer, non-binary person, I find it a very queer and non-binary art form. Similarly, you're creating and recreating space from scratch. There's the potential to create literally anything you want. You can control the physics of the world that you're creating. And specifically with this project, I'm creating a place in 3D space that perhaps isn't 100% truthful in terms of geography, but it's based on memory and personal experience. So it's a good way for me to demonstrate my internal vision of Hong Kong. And I also find animation is a cool way of movement. I find it to be an extension of the body, and I'm able to kind of perform through animation, and it's a way of imbuing objects with my own movements. And so it allows us to tell traumatic narratives that are difficult to put into words. And as Anne Spekovich says in Archive of Feelings, the challenge of archiving traumatic moments of history that are so saturated with emotion is that emotion and memories are ephemeral, and traumatic memories are even more so. So with the ways our minds tend to dissociate from trauma and block out trauma from our memories, how do we tell these stories? Finally, there was some audience participation involved in this. With the fabric, it created an opportunity for people to play around with it. And also because it does obscure the view, from certain angles, you kind of have to kind of move around the space, find a spot that you think you want to view the piece from. A lot of people came up to me during the opening night and were like, so where should I stand to see this? You can literally do whatever you want. You can walk through the fabric. You can. Some people actually end up laying amongst the fabric, and that create the effect of looking like the buildings are falling onto you. So there are all sorts of different ways that one can choose to view this piece, which I found pretty cool. And the audience ended up being kind of performers themselves. It was a really echoey room, so audience breathing ended up being kind of incorporated into the sound design when everything went silent and all you could hear is heavy breathing. And the audience could actually hear their own breathing as well. And also, the movement of the fabric changes depending on audience movement. And so like if you're walking through it, it had maybe softer ripples. If you're like literally moving it around, there are greater distortions. So kind of reflecting the idea of community and like community allowing, like for example, when I'm in community, I feel less of that nostalgia for home. And so I see Hong Kong a little bit less in my mind's eye. So yeah, what I continuously try to do is use art and that archive of feelings for personal and collective feelings in a way that doesn't pathologize and medicalize trauma. And I find this to be my form of political resistance. The combination of media, art, and space created an affective experience where trauma can be expressed, shared, and understood in a communal setting where everyone's sharing the same space in the same room. And so this allows for the possibility of individual and collective healing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. I wonder, before you unplug your computer, I wonder if there's any questions or comments, reflections on this beautiful presentation. Thank you so much. Yeah, Shabnam.
Thank you.
It's amazing. In fact, I was just thinking about your audience. Were there children in your audience?
There were some, not mostly just because it was at a university, but there were some, yes.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I could just imagine a child just wrapping themselves.
Yes, the kids who were there had lots of fun.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or reflections? Thank you so much. Oh.
The animations are really gorgeous, like beautiful job on those. And I'm curious about, because you also mentioned community, the choice of not having any people in the market scene, and if you thought about that and chose against it deliberately.
Yeah, it was really just the sounds of people that were present. I find that when I think about the street markets, I did try adding people in. It just felt off. I think without people, it created that kind of uncanny look, which kind of reflects how I feel about Hong Kong now. So yes, I did think about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Another round of applause. All right, so next, yes, it's you, Zackary McKendrick is coming up here. Let me make some room for Andy to help. Thank you to Andy and Martin, who are caring for our stream and our presenters today. So Zackary McKendrick, who you might know as Zack McKendrick, is a director, actor, researcher, retired professional wrestler, if you're looking for small talk later, at the intersection of drama, technology, and human-computer interaction. And if anyone did attend 2021 last night, you'll also know that Zack is a wicked gamer. Yeah. I'm going to vamp a little bit here. So we have two events today at FoLDA. The first is the artist reception for Kinomics at the Agnes Etherington Garages, which are on Stewart Street. And then later this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time is the performance of Windrush by Marcel Stewart, back there at the back of the room. If you are not in Kingston, lucky you, because Windrush is being live streamed tonight, and you can catch the show at www.folda.ca/livestream. Are you ready? You're good. Okay. Zackary McKendrick.
Microphone check. 1, 2. What is this? Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for the introduction and for inviting me to be a part of these incredible discussions, performances, and presentations. My name is Zack. I'm a first-generation Caribbean Canadian. My family comes from St. Lucia, Barbados, and Guyana. I come to you today from the University of Waterloo, located on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. The main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land granted to the Six Nations that includes the 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. As a researcher, creator, theater maker working in and with digital technology, I'd be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge the many, many people that make this work and our meeting here possible today. From installation technicians and IT professionals that help establish and maintain the networks that we use, to the laborers that manufacture our hardware, and the miners that extract the raw materials in often unimaginable conditions to make all of this happen. Lastly, very fortunate to be working in human-computer interaction and performance in Canada. And want to acknowledge the access to technology that I and a lot of us in this room have. And just say that as we ask the questions that we think are important and relevant within this domain or tell stories that are meaningful to us, it's important to remember the countless voices that are unable to contribute to this discussion, whether that's through means or access. So as you're going forward and creating projects and looking for collaborators, see where you can reach out. Good morning, everyone. I invite you all to join me in a very quick body break. If you're able to, willing to, want to, no pressure, no stress. Peer pressure does help though, so the more people get up, the better. Participate to the extent of your ability. Just really quickly, we take a nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And in through the nose and out through the mouth. And on the next deep breath in, bring your shoulders up to your ears. Deep breath in. And exhale and let them drop. Don't forget to bend your knees a little bit. And deep breath in. And out. One more time, we're going to go up on our toes when our shoulders go up. Deep breath in. And come down. And one more time, up. And down. Good, we'll do a little box breathing and then I'll let you all sit back down. So we're gonna inhale on a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, exhale on an 8, okay? So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. Deep breath in, and on the exhale, just shake it out and make some sound. Deep breath in. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. My pleasure. So, as I've said, and as you all know by this point, my name is Zach. Hi. I am an actor, a director, and former professional wrestler. I have worked across Canada in opera, theater, film, and television, and internationally in human-computer interaction research. Most recently, I snuck a bunch of performance practice technique into a research project with a group of fantastic collaborators and presented it at the Conference on Human Factors in Computing, also known as CHI, in Yokohama, Japan, just last month. However, despite previous explorations with robots and drones, my work and research interests are primarily centered around 3 key concepts. So that is virtual reality, which creates immersive experiences, allowing users to interact within a 3D environment as defined by Milgram and Kashino. Human-computer interaction, or HCI, which focuses on optimizing the interaction between humans and computers, typically with an emphasis on usability and participant experience. And then also drama, and more specifically performance practices in this context, referring to the methodologies used in drama and theater for character creation and embodiment, such as acting techniques. My research at the intersection of these 3 domains has resulted in 2 primary research questions, which is how can XR support traditional performance practices? And how can we leverage existing performance practices to support holistic participant engagement in HCI research? So, in 2020, this little thing happened that forced a lot of live entertainment venues to shut their doors for a while. This mass closure of live entertainment venues caused many in the performance community to have to pivot and find new ways of sharing work and engaging audiences. And traditional live performance practice gave way to more interdisciplinary digital approaches to creation. And from this shift, as if overnight, a new community emerged, with many creators choosing to continue creating in VR full-time in this new post-pandemic, very kind of world. Of course, to many, the shift to VR was not surprising, with some creators and theater technologists suggesting that COVID merely accelerated the adoption of this new technology. But psychologists have been asking questions about virtual reality, like what makes immersive VR the ultimate empathy machine, for years. And when I came across this in my research, I couldn't help but think of another empathy machine that I was very familiar with. So first, a little history lesson. In 1938, dramatist Antonin Artaud, a name familiar to people in this room, fantastic, I'm amongst friends, this is great. Antonin Artaud coined the phrase réalité virtuelle, pardon my French, to describe the simulated reality of live theater in both practice and performance. Now, Artaud was referring to what he viewed as an alchemical process, creating plays from random materials and symbols of a time, place, or culture. Today, VR systems are becoming more ubiquitous. And it's important to remember the relationship between drama and virtual reality as we continue down the path of what we might now call a digital alchemy. So with that relationship in mind, and as part of my ongoing research, early on in my PhD, I identified 4 main categories for digitally mediated performance. These are very rough containers that can be used to identify digitally mediated performances, though it is important to note that some productions, many productions in fact, may traverse these categories multiple times even within the same show. So first we have Zoom plays and live streams, which is one-way delivery where the viewer interaction is minimal and typically confined to an online chat. We also have hybrid theater, which leverages digital technology in its composition and delivery, but remains mostly one-sided. We then have co-located performance, which will position the audience inside of the narrative in some way where they have a direct, albeit limited, relationship with the performer. And then finally, we have immersive VR theater, which is typically wholly immersive, with the audience playing some sort of role, pardon me, within the narrative to help progress, dictate, or in some cases derail the play. After exploring and creating in this VR space for a few years in the early parts of my PhD, I was left with several questions. And as anyone in this kind of space knows, questions beget more questions, which beget more questions. And so I went back to my roots to answer these questions, which is my training as an actor, as a director, and started to look at actors as liminal beings and interaction specialists that are capable of existing in multiple states of reality simultaneously. Stella Adler, show of hands, that name is familiar to people in this room. Fantastic, I love being amongst friends. Stella Adler says that carrying a spear makes you a different person. Right? Interacting with a physical object changes the way that an actor perceives and thus engages with their surroundings. So too, wearing a VR headset changes you. This shift in perspective poses a challenge when using digital technologies to recreate performance environments. Introducing too many elements at once can have adverse effects. For instance, the more tech the actor engages with, the further they get from focusing on the work of the scene. In other words, the more technology, the higher the cognitive load and the lower the feeling of immersion and embodiment in the participant. So, to try and navigate through this, we introduced a thresholding protocol. This is a series of short physical prompts based on the work of acting teacher Michael Chekhov that we do before entering and then after exiting our black box environment. These exercises lead the performer through several non-invasive actions designed to connect the participant with their own body while also calibrating the avatar to the environment. To build our environment, the virtual rehearsal suite here, we started with an empty room and borrowed the stage plot that would be familiar to many theater practitioners, which is the orange grid lines here to denote upstage, center stage down, left, center, right. And then we added the mirror, which comes from dance practice as well, to help the participant calibrate their physical movements with the avatar while also acting as our downstage marker. But seeing as how we're in VR, we also took inspiration from some other familiar spaces as well, including the versatility of Star Trek's holodeck, or Abed's Imaginarium for my community fans. We also took the invitation to practice from fighting game training levels. And then finally, the familiarity of mission indicators that come from RPG games. And so, the virtual rehearsal suite. Inside, we devised a heads-up display that has a script broken down into Stanislavski beats that comes equipped with blocking indicators that are attached to each page of the script. So as you flip through the pages of the script, the blocking indicator moves and tells you where to go in the space. We, of course, have the mirror so you can observe your own movements. And we included props that would be familiar to actors inside of a standard black box environment, in this case, a cube, right? To test the VRS, we ran a performance workshop. 6 of our participants attended the workshop in a rehearsal studio that mimicked the dimensions of the virtual room, while 2 participants came in via Zoom at home. This is my favorite picture from all of the work that we did, because our participant is acting and their dad is doing laundry in the background and just kept coming in and out of frame, and they had no idea, and it was amazing. It was great. So all 8 actors were placed inside of the virtual rehearsal suite. They had 6 feet by 6 feet of physical space to navigate through with 2 controllers and joysticks, and they were navigating through the larger 30 by 45 foot digital space. They were given 30 minutes a day for 5 consecutive days to work on memorization and blocking of William Shakespeare's To Be or Not to Be. After a total of 2.5 hours of rehearsal time over the 5 days, the actors were asked to perform the monologue twice inside of VR and then twice in real life without the aid of the heads-up display. The goal was to replicate the text and blocking from the VRS as accurately as possible. Of the 8 participants, 7 completed the full week of rehearsals. Of those 7, 6 completed the exercise with over 90% textual and blocking accuracy, translating from just moving their thumbs through the virtual space to the full movement in the physical space. Our 2 professional actors boasted over 95% accuracy, which would have been higher, except one of the actors stumbled on one word. They caught themselves, but based on our metrics, we had to count it as a fault. Our participant 7, unfortunately, was unable to complete the performance portion, but this is likely due to 2 factors. 1, they had the least amount of performance experience amongst the group, and 2, they had intentionally spent the majority of their time in our rehearsal sessions, not rehearsing, but instead trying to, quote, break our system. Across all but one of the participants, the virtual rehearsal suite served as an effective tool for performance practice. Additionally, all participants could spend longer inside of VR and reported less motion sickness during and fewer instances of VR hangovers after performing in the thresholding protocols. This was noted as helpful before the session, but mostly after, when they transitioned back out of VR into their own physical body. Our design, of course, could use some improvement. Multiple participants commented on our color palette being a little overwhelming, especially for people susceptible to migraines. It was a very stark contrast, so that needs some attention. The red cube, which was intended to be a familiar object inside of the space for the actors, actually served as a topographical marker when the performers switched into the real life space, which was really interesting. And then several participants commented that it was easier to feel immersed in the exercises because they were viewing the avatar not as a depiction of themselves, but as the character, so they could step into that space. P2, our least familiar and most resistant to virtual reality technology, I should say, remarked that the physical differences of the avatar in themselves stopped them from feeling self-conscious about their movements and performance. They saw it as kind of an outside other. While P8, on the other hand, started to feel responsible for the avatar and equated the to be or not to be speech to the existence of the avatar itself, all of which suggests that the design of the avatar has little to do with the levels of immersion specifically when it comes to actor engagement. Perhaps most impressive for us was our more seasoned participants or professional actors were actually able to decipher directional cues and character building cues from the way the script and blocking was set up in the room. I'll quickly run through this stuff because I'm overtime. But my future work is focused on embodiment and embodied interaction, both theoretically and practically. So I'm expanding this work both in HCI with robots, with drones. This is some of the work that you can see here. I'm happy to talk about any of it here. Come and find me. That shouldn't be in there. That's 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves. There we go. I hate when that happens. Thank you for your time and your interest and for your patience with me running over a little bit here. I look forward to any questions or comments, or come and find me and talk to me at any time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zach. Any questions, comments? I got a hand here.
Thanks so much for that. I actually really want to hear more about breaking it. And I'm wondering a bit about the kind of acting that's being investigated here and whether you do see potential for those people who are looking to break it and maybe create other types of work as performers. And just if you wanted to comment a bit on that. Yeah, sure. My approach to this was based on my own training. So I come from like a classically trained theater background. So that's kind of how I entered this space, looking at a tool to support that, and both in VR and in transition into real life. But in terms of the breaking of it and the application to other forms, I think it could be it could be applied to a lot of different creative mediums. We're right now investigating what it means to have multiple bodies present inside of this neutral black box space, and with the notation mechanisms that we have in place with the blocking indicators, implementing, I can't say too much about it right now, but implementing different controls so that it is a collaborative experience with people inside and outside of the system. There are multiple ways that I think it can be applied to different types of practice, certainly. One thing I didn't get into is that there's a camera function as well that is based in the room. It just takes a lot of computational power to process through, so we didn't activate it for this piece. It just depends on what you want to explore through, but there's possibility. The goal is to do it with the minimum amount of technology possible. So we're trying to remove as many barriers as we can. The entire thing can be done inside of a VR a Quest headset, which I happen to have a couple here if anyone's interested in playing around later. But all you need literally is a headset and 2 controllers and 6 feet by 6 feet of space. So you don't need a full motion cap rig, and you can do physical practice, you can do embodied stuff as well, if that answers your question. Yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm doing my best. Phil Donahue running to the back of the room.
Really awesome stuff. This is like really stimulating and compelling. I'm curious, and maybe this is for a conversation later, but sure. Technology as prop, technology as scenic and environment, and you're bringing up Stanislavski and you're bringing up Chekhov and stuff. I'm just curious if you've ever delved into technology as like scene partner, a la Jim Carrey, The Mask. Like you put on the mask wants something out of your body, but you're revolting, like it becomes a scene partner. Yeah. And I'm just curious, there's some people in the US looking at it in using Meisner, like a repetition kind of thing with you and not Avatar, but like you and the actual technology. I'm just curious if you've delved into that as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I haven't yet. I'm currently, if anyone's interested, there's a research study that I'm going to be running as a 2-day workshop at Waterloo, where we're looking at the possibility of the VR headset as mask, in fact. And so how can we use like Comedia techniques to influence how we step into virtual avatars, and then how does that physical representation of the archetypes from Comedia then translate into social relationships in VR? So not in tension with the technology itself, but looking at different modes that we can apply to the technology. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know there's lots of questions, but I'm going to move on. And I know that Zach is really friendly, and we'll talk to you later. I know that about him. Jay Westerlund is here next as our next presenter. And while he sets up, I'm going to read a bio. Oops.
You're here to supervise. Just for support. Thank you.
All right. So Jay Westerlund is a digital strategist and design leader with over 20 years of experience shaping how people engage with culture and knowledge and technology. He leads interdisciplinary design teams that blend UX, media production, data strategy, and service design to create inclusive multi-channel experiences for cultural organizations like the National Arts Centre in Ottawa, which is where we met. And a big shout out to the National Arts Centre, who has been supporting, through your department, Jay, supporting FoLDA since its very beginning. Woohoo! Thank you, Jay. Over to you.
Thank you. I can probably skip over a lot of the stuff I was going to say at the beginning. So yes, thank you. My name is Jason Westerlund, and I'm, as Adrian says, I'm the director of digital experience design at the NAC. The NAC is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. It is kind of known by the settlers as Ottawa. I'm not an artist, as many of you are. I'm an arts administrator. I've spent the last 20 years of my career using design methods and digital means to really sort of connect, to create the conditions where artists and audiences can connect and experience things together. And I lead an interdisciplinary design team at the NAC. We've got, it's an interdisciplinary design team and media studio, and we're really kind of focused on trying to create opportunities to deliver performing arts any place, anytime, and for people of all abilities. Our practices include UX, interaction design, wayfinding, motion design, graphic design. We've got software developers, networking specialists as well too. Really just kind of a full gamut of technologists and designers in order to really kind of solve any of the most complicated problems that are being thrown at us by our various teams. We'll work with artistic teams, and we'll also work with a lot of the customer-facing teams as well too. So we also manage all of the end-to-end experience, the transactional experiences at the NAC as well too. So we are able to sort of really kind of help support audiences in every part of their engagement with this. Lately, I've been naively stepping into this area of cultural policy making, if you will. I am way out of my depth, but I really want to share a project with you, and I can't even speak on the other parts of it, but I want to kind of talk about some of the technology, this R&D project that we've been working on with a bunch of cultural partners, technology partners across Canada. So, the proposition, how do we describe our work to the machines that help us? That challenge really lies at the heart of all of our lives right now. Right now, Canadian culture's content is being misrepresented, buried, erased because we haven't invested in the metadata that tells machines who we are and how our work matters to us. Big tech platforms will prioritize profit over public interest, and without structured metadata, Canadian culture is undefined, undervalued, and we're just kind of we're not just losing visibility in these platforms, we're also losing control. So, discoverability isn't just about creating better content. Lots and lots of people are just putting up more and more content online. It's about providing the machines with the structure they need to understand the meaning behind the content, behind that work. Without that structure, the AI models don't recognize us, search engines don't prioritize us, our national memory just sort of fades as links erode over time. Those links don't connect, our memory fades, and nothing really lasts online. So in other words, without metadata, all the data and content, it just becomes noise. Without a knowledge graph, nothing connects. And I'm going to walk you through what a lot of this means. And without interoperability, every investment becomes another silo. There's a lot of investment going on in Canada right now on different sort of tech platforms and technologies to try and help Canadian artists, and we want to make sure that we're investing in the right things. And again, this problem isn't just theoretical, it's happening right now. There's lots of legacy information that's trapped in old PDFs, strewn across websites, locked in proprietary databases that, you know, discovery platforms that we all rely on to surface that information, like Google, they really can't parse any of that information. So at the NAC, about 50% of our traffic comes from Google. Another 10% comes from like Meta's social platforms. So as an organization, 60% of our traffic, 60% of the way that we're trying to engage with our Canadian audiences is coming through systems Canada doesn't own. Canada didn't set the models of how those are built, and we're sort of outsourcing the ability of how these platforms are retelling our stories and presenting it to Canadians. So it's really, sorry, something just glitched. So it's really more than digital strategy. It's really a matter of sovereignty, and the internet is no longer the democratic commons that it was when I started working on it like 20 years ago. And like many of us were dabbling on it, it's really changed. It's a landscape that's curated by algorithms and governed by big teams big teams and big platforms. And we're not really sort of investing in that digital DNA that's helping sort of surface and reconnect all of our digital legacy online. So without this kind of metadata, and I'm going to walk you through that here, all of this kind of structured, inoperable metadata, Canada loses its agency on how our culture is ranked, how it is found, and how it is sort of interconnected. What ends up happening as a result of that is that we can be misrepresented online or ignored completely. When an internet is shifting towards being kind of optimized for profit and not necessarily for meaning and understanding. And we run a risk of kind of falling and just dissolving into the algorithm. So let me just give you an example here. When you ask something like ChatGPT about a famous Canadian artist, it gets things wrong. We've all experienced this. ChatGPT can be dutiful and eager, a diligent kind of servant that it's doing, but it can also make things up that it doesn't understand. And in its eagerness to sort of make these connections, it'll sort of talk about, it'll try and confidently give responses to things that it doesn't actually know. And that's also because it's been fed a diet of information that didn't necessarily come from Canada, or it wasn't really presented in a way that these machines could understand and make those types of connections. Another example is, hypothetically, you've produced a play. It's been out on the, it toured for a bit, it had its shelf life. But maybe 6 months later, somebody comes back to try and find that piece. And the problem is that it's kind of evaporated offline, online. There's no more event pages. YouTube clips don't sort of show up. The touring history of that piece is no longer available. Any awards that it may have come together, any of the tangible information about it was probably buried in some sort of a PDF, some sort of a program note or something, and it's all just sort of like evaporates. And really what's happened here is that none of that material was actually produced from the beginning to actually be findable in the future, or linkable, or interconnected and preserved over time. And again, as a result, this is sort of like effectively sort of not really helping us maintain our digital records for future audiences and researchers, or AI models that people are starting to use more and more. So how do we mitigate this issue? So this is a simple page right off our website for an event that's coming up later this month, actually. And this is typical of any page you've ever seen. Any time you've ever bought tickets for any type of show, ours isn't really no different. You've probably managed or had your own shows set up on there. And It's probably the same structure you would put on an 8-year-old's birthday card, birthday invitation for that matter, of just really kind of understanding the who, what, when, where of that information. Now again, as humans, we would look at this and we would understand, by looking at this information, we would be able to parse and understand what this means. We've seen this before, we've seen this pattern before, but this is not the way that machines see this type of thing. They're not able to derive meaning from this particular one. The way machines want to see it is like this kind of Unix-formed date. And this is the type of stuff that we've started including in all of our event pages, kind of hidden behind, in the code in behind what's going on, in order to make it more machine readable. Now, pardon the code that I've thrown here up on screen, but this is basically the changes that we've made to the website. And you can kind of skim across the yellow links. You can sort of see that we've added the same information that's kind of on the visual layer of the website. We've added that to the data layer of the website. So you can sort of see the start times, the name of the presenter, the work that's being performed, what kind of work it is, actually like descriptors about how that's categorized, that work, what it's also like, similar to. And it also actually links into the actual performer as well too. And I do want to sort of draw your attention to the blue link at the bottom, because that's where we connect the artist, the playwright, director of this particular piece into the Canadian cultural knowledge graph that we've been developing. And when I say we, it's a collection of us that are all working together. So let's define what a knowledge graph is. So interestingly enough, like, knowledge graphs are the core intellectual property of all of the digital mega platforms that we all use, like Facebook, like Google. That is what that's what they've created. They've amassed these knowledge graphs. They watch what content is out there, they label and they categorize it. They watch what each one of us does and creates a knowledge graph about each one of us, and then they use their algorithms to pair up that content and that information together. So that is essentially what those platforms do. These become the drivers of engagement online. Recent numbers I've been looking at is that Netflix reports that over 80% of the content that people watch on Netflix is driven by recommendations. It's not by search. It's not by something else came up. It's because the algorithm knew what you watched and what other people watched, and it's serving it up. So it's 80% of the engagement that they're driving on there. YouTube is doing the same kind of thing, and it's at 70%. So 70% of the videos that people watch on YouTube are because you watched one thing and it recommends something else. So it's critical that your content is all kind of structured and labeled and connected, not just within those platforms, but externally as well, so they all link together and tell that full story of that piece that you've been working on. So that means that for Canadian performing arts content to be available on these platforms, and a significant portion of these potential audiences actually come from AI suggestions and AI algorithms, opposed to necessarily intentional search. But there's hope. We have good news. We've been working on a model, and there's an arts data. This project is called Arts Data. This is what the network is called. It's a knowledge graph, which is kind of this sophisticated interconnection of arts presenters and arts organizations that are sharing their content online. Over the last 7 years, the Canadian Heritage and Canada Council have invested about $5 million in different kind of sparse grants along the way that has helped us sort of build up and cobble together this technology over time to start to build this out. You can see some of the numbers here of what's actually in that knowledge graph right now. There's about 40,000 events, 7,200 artists, Canadian artists in there, about 2,200 arts organization. I think the NAC has amassed, we have so many artists that come through, we end up sort of upcycling and handing off a lot of that content into, we end up uploading and sharing a lot of our content. I think we've contributed about 3,000 of those bios into the system ourselves. So what makes it unique is also just sort of its focus on reusability. And I'm going to give you some examples of how the NAC has reused it on a global scale right now, this year, of a project that's live right now. So any information that gets uploaded into Arts Data and shared through Arts Data can get picked up by any other organization, and they can reuse it, and they can enhance it, they can recycle it, they can upcycle and send it back to the thing in case they find that there's information missing. This has sort of reduced a lot of duplication of work, a lot of copying and pasting between, if anybody's kind of worked on the arts administration side, it's a whole lot of copying and pasting between bio sheets and web entry forms and all of that kind of stuff. It reduces all of that because it's able to sort of sync up through the cloud, and it's able to get the most recent information from this sort of shared ecosystem, the shared commons of other arts organizations. So the Arts Data mission is really simple. It's to ensure Canadian performances and artists remain discoverable in a world dominated by algorithms and controlled by global tech giants. It sounds so grim, but it is the reality of where we're at. So back to this example here. Again, I sort of pointed out that we sort of look at this particular link. We're talking about Emily Monet, which is an indigenous, she's a Algonquin Anishinaabe theater practitioner. She's multi-talented. I think she's producing and directing and starring in this particular piece. But you can see this URL actually links into the knowledge graph in the behind the scenes. Through that knowledge graph, we're able to, well, not we are able, the Indigenous Performing, like on the other side of the internet, the Indigenous Performing Arts Alliance has put out recently an Indigenous data sovereignty paper and initiative that they've got underway that is trying to focus on improving Indigenous self-determination in digital spaces. So if we, the NAC, properly attribute Emily's nationality, her First Nation status in here, it will automatically get synced into that. So anytime any artist that we are presenting at the NAC has got the proper metadata associated with it, it automatically gets pulled into that system. We've invested in this that IPA, Capicoa, and the NAC went together on a grant application to hire an Indigenous librarian residence that works out of the Capicoa offices in Ottawa. And they work with the IPAA members to just validate all that information, to make sure that it's actually correct, that people's art forms are properly identified, their names are properly spelled, their nation affiliations are properly acknowledged as it goes. The NAC has been, this is a second project that we've been working on. The NAC is currently presenting the art. We've curated the cultural stage at the Canada Pavilion in Osaka, Japan. This launched in mid-March, and it runs until mid-October. It's a lot of programming. We've got 100 artists that we're bringing through here, and we use the Arts Data Network. We were bringing 100 artists over to put them on the stage at the stage in Osaka. Many of them are established artists. Some of them are emerging. We had to build the bios out for all of these, and what we ended up doing was building this all using this Arts Data technology. We went out to the network, grabbed a lot of bios, social links, video clips, audio samples, and everything, and we were able to sort of pull it back. So we were able to rapidly develop this experience. What's great about this is that we've been able to get Global Affairs interested and fascinated in this project, as well as Destination Canada, which is NAC's, is the Canada's cultural board. Any artists that were new and emerging that we were presenting that weren't in the knowledge graph, we've been able to add them into the system and upload them back into the system. So again, somebody like Aaron Costello, if there was any details that were missing, we could sort of add that and enrich that data and put it back up for the next time that somebody is presenting her down the road. Our next frontier that we're working on right now is the tourism sector. We're currently working on a prototype right now where we'll be syncing our certain events from the NAC's website over onto the cultural calendar over on Ottawa Tourism. Once we get that pilot running, this will all move. This is a process that used to be handled through emails, coordination, emailing spreadsheets back and forth, people on both teams, copying and pasting stuff, and all of that will be gone. All the NAC will have to do is just tag certain events as to going to the tourism board, and it will automatically sync over there. Once we get this running, we're going to open it up to other organizations around Ottawa, other presenters that also already sharing their programming in with the Arts Data Network, and we're going to end up putting their stuff in as well too. Then we're really keen on leveraging our relationship with Destination Canada that's come out of the Expo project, and we're going to start rolling this out nationally. That's the vision. Wrapping up, metadata isn't really an optional extra. It's really the backbone of infrastructure. Government invests in all kinds of infrastructure to connect physical places in our world, physical places in Canada, but we're really kind of skipping over this other important piece of structural, of infrastructure meaning. This really matters in a time like right now. In a world where instability is a tactic, we need to build the conditions for our own stability. You're watching the news yesterday, it was nothing but instability. It's still probably carrying on now. Without this kind of metadata structure, we really kind of cede our creative control, our cultural control to big tech companies based in the US that don't really have incentives that align with ours in Canada. Canada's narrative gets rewritten by algorithms that we don't shape, that we have no influence on. This is our best way to sort of feed into the diet of what those machines read and understand in order to them to sort of like bring it back up to us as Canadians. This work is being led by an Arts Data community group. You can see our membership here. We're working on defining the different structures. Think about it like library sciences, of just making sure that there's actually a known structure of how this works. Many of these different groups are all running different local, regional projects that are aggregating, francophone artists in Montreal or different performers into La Vitrine is running a show, sort of aggregating shows and programming in Montreal to bring it all together into one particular place. That's one great example. NEC is just trying to run at a slightly larger scale on this. If you're interested in learning more about this project or getting involved in it anyway, this is where you can learn more about us. That's all I got.
Okay. Wow, thank you, Jay, so much for all of that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it is a lot, and we're gonna have. I think that it's gonna lead into our conversations that we have this afternoon.
It's probably the best place to talk about it.
It is probably the best place to talk about. Right now, I'm going to say thank you. We're not going to take any questions right now.
That's okay.
Because we have Create Canada, Owais, Lightwalla, and SGS, Sarah, Garton, Stanley. I have to plug in my computer. Can I hand you this? Thank you.
Hello. How's everyone feeling? Great. I have a 10-week-old, so the fact that I am standing is a win. Yeah. We had a long night. She did not appreciate the new hotel room as much as I appreciated it. So, but also she's adorable. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. On the whole, I'm still winning, I think. Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt now because that's back to me. Thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it. You've just met Owais Lightwalla, a professor, entrepreneur, and optimist. He is an assistant professor in the Creative School at Toronto Metropolitan University, focusing on entrepreneurship, leadership, and innovation in the creative industries. He has a baby, a new baby, and he's working on several experimental projects on deploying AI to make things better in the cultural sector. And then Sarah Garton Stanley here, who's also presenting, known as SGS, is a Canadian thought leader and, I can agree to this, a creative force. SGS holds a PhD in cultural studies from Queen's University, where she focused her work on the 1951 Massey Commission. Her roles have included VP of Programming at Arts Commons in Calgary and Artistic Producer of the National Creation Fund at the National Arts Centre, and also co-founder of Spiderweb Show and FoLDA. Welcome, SJS and Owais.
Thank you.
So, first of all, what an incredible morning of talks, laser talks, which without having, talked to you about this, it feels like it's perfect groundwork to describe some of the things that we've been thinking about in terms of this project, which started about a month, 6 weeks before the election?
Something like that. Like too late. Too close to the election we started working on it, basically.
So what we thought we would do is just introduce you to this artifact, which hopefully will be found on Arts Data soon. But it's an artifact that came to be, as Owais said, too late to lead us to the election. And we didn't necessarily know for sure that we were leading to the election. We knew an election was coming. It was before the election was called, actually. Right. And more we were responding to this question about cultural sovereignty. So we weren't thinking specifically about some of the implications that Jay was just bringing forward, but definitely thinking theoretically about some of those questions and ideas. So perhaps we should just read what our primary purpose statement is.
The primary purpose of culture is to supercharge Canada. Supercharging means spotlighting the unexpected and untried, unleashing the full innovative capacity of our people. Supercharging means we don't apologize for what makes us unique. Sorry, not sorry. Supercharging means building a future where everyone thrives. Supercharging means we aggressively get out of our own way. Supercharging is not about making us the greatest nation on earth. In A Fair Country, John Ralston Saul argues that we are a Métis nation. Canada is shaped by Indigenous values and enriched by a plurality of traditions, egalitarianism, negotiation, and inclusivity. To not be the USA is to espouse caring, as seen in our attempts at reconciliation, universal healthcare, multicultural policies, official bilingualism, a different relationship to gun controls, and maple syrup. This country has talent, ideas, and money. We do not need more. We need fearless affirmation of who we are. Anything that gets in the way of our creativity is a threat to sovereignty. We need to look to communities rather than institutions to define what culture is and what Canada is. We need to create the conditions for authentic connection. We need to discount the phrases, but it didn't work there, or it worked there. Refuse any attempt at validating or invalidating our imagination through the lens of some other great place. Let's be candid. We are the grand experiment. So let's be a living experiment for good and try new ways of doing. The Massey Commission was a cultural plan from 1951. That's before calculators, color television, microwaves, and let's face it, before almost anyone reading this or listening to this was born. The people who wrote it imagined a lot of things, but they couldn't imagine the internet or reconciliation, let alone AI. Let's make something for now and for our collective tomorrow. Let's supercharge Canada. Let's create Canada. We'll be taking any questions now. Thank you.
It's a great reading. Yeah, just scroll down a little bit because we wanted to make sure that David Maggs is referenced here as the third thinker as we put this project out into the world. So that statement came about after kind of countless hours of a lot of frustration and trying to figure out how to put together something that could just launch a conversation. And I think probably that's more what we're interested together and with David as well in doing is to spark conversation, to get some responses back and to see whether we can move the needle and perhaps occasionally kind of light fires under ourselves and others. Yeah.
Should we do the letter now?
Yeah.
So yeah. This statement was our first attempt between the writing collective to try and figure out what it is that we were trying to achieve. And then we kind of very much started this project without really knowing where it was going, but had this strong sense that something needed to be done to respond to the moment that there was going to be, at that time, very certainly leadership change at the federal level that maybe was one that people were afraid of. And we wanted to do something generative and productive in that time than just being sad and scared and anxious, but didn't have a very clear path of where that was going. After putting this out, we felt a little bit more emboldened, and then we started writing a bunch of writings that we put under the ideas section that are individual policy proposals. Some of them are very vast and expensive and massive projects, and some of them are very precise and targeted. And again, we were kind of muddling our way through, loosely inspired by some far more entitled folks who also did some policy writing around that time in the entrepreneurship business space and had all kinds of ideas for how Canada could be made greater. And we were like, well, if they feel permission to just say things, maybe we should just say things, see what happens. We ended with the one that we're going to share with you, which was the day before the actual results of the federal, I guess it was the day of the election, of the federal election that did happen on April 28th. We wrote a letter to the impending future prime minister that Sarah will read to you now.
Yeah, it was important to us to get this out on Sunday, which was the day before, and we really didn't know. And we talked a lot about that. And in fact, when we first started this, before this project was born, the people that we put this project together with, we were like so many, I'm sure of you who were thinking about these questions, were imagining that we were going to be having a lot of conversations with the Conservatives about the cultural policy moving forward. And so obviously over the course of the election and because of the leadership in the United States and because of the question around the 51st state and sovereignty, everything started to shift, but we still didn't know. And in fact, the results make it such that it was kind of interesting to write it with that open thought in mind. So, dear Prime Minister, as you take on the responsibility of leading this country into its next chapter, we write to offer our congratulations, our admiration to your commitment to the work ahead, and to offer our collaboration in that work. Before we begin, let's start by getting the hard part out of the way. It's not about more money. More money can't solve anything unless we have better ideas on how to deploy it. Whether it's existing monies or new monies, we believe our focus needs to be on how we supercharge Canada to meet the moment. Not only is our country's need for a vibrant culture urgent, we need that culture to be of this place. But what does that mean? Canada is comprised of a multiplicity of cultures and traditions. That has always been true of this land. That's our superpower. At this moment, we also know that the cultural needs of this country are changing fast, and that is something we can embrace. Why do we need supercharging? Because there's an overwhelming sense that we have lost our way. That's why you were elected, because we need new energy and new direction as we prepare for the biggest dogfight of our lives. As Goliath casually threatens our existence, who are we? What do? We are proud Canadians not because we believe Canada holds some exceptional destiny, but because we understand that fighting to be the best is less important than fighting to be decent. We know you have your work cut out for you, the economy, housing, national security, and sovereignty, and something about tariffs we forget are those on or off, but these are small potatoes in comparison to the big spud. People aren't feeling good. This feeling can't be solved solely with low interest rates and low unemployment. We can't underestimate the power of purpose, the importance of meaning, the benefits of belonging, and the comforts of home. This is where culture comes in. Maybe not the institutional kind, but the kind that people use every day to feel like they belong in their lives and that their lives belong in this place. Our desired collaboration begins with the co-creation of new ideas. Too often, arguments about culture in Canada are about increasing resources to preserve old ideas, preservation of supply, about keeping what we have, worried that we won't have anything if we dare let go of something. Your goal for a stronger Canada has inspired us to think about solutions to our shared challenges. Restoring hope and confidence. Canadians feel increasingly uncertain about their future and disconnected from their communities. Introducing a cultural well-being index, which you can click through to find out about, to track and foster community participation, volunteering, and social trust would strengthen social cohesion and restore confidence in our collective future. Making a great life TM more affordable. Many Canadians are worried about affordability and feel cut off from enriching cultural and community activities. A universal Canada Culture Pass providing every citizen, resident, and refugee direct funding to access local culture would ease financial pressures, stimulate local economies, and make life richer and more affordable for everyone. Empowering youth and building national unity. Our youth face growing challenges, including disconnection from community, life, and national unity. Establishing an arts and culture core would offer meaningful engagement, career-building opportunities, and foster stronger national belonging and unity among young Canadians from coast to coast. Rebuilding and strengthening our communities. Local communities across Canada require renewed investment in cultural spaces and operations to support vibrant community life and economic revival. A dedicated community cultural operation fund would renew local venues, supporting community vitality, economic resilience, and a renewed sense of local pride and ownership. Giving power to the people. Canadians seek greater transparency and control over public spending, introducing participatory culture budgeting that directly empowers citizens in decisions about local cultural investments, ensuring spending aligns with local needs, enhances civic connection, and rebuilds trust in public institutions. We're a nation comprised of many nations. In a scarcity mindset, this is a liability. But with a view to abundance, it's an unparalleled strength. Supercharging the nation means shifting from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance. That's the work of culture. We look forward to discussing these challenges and solutions with you and your team over dinner or another setting of your choosing. Together, we can strengthen our shared sense of belonging, purpose, and national resilience. Let's have a conversation. In the meantime, thank you for working to preserve our freedom to write directly to you. Owais Lightwalla, David Maggs, and Sarah Garton Stanley, SGS.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that's basically all we wanted to present, because we really wanted to have a conversation and see kind of responses and thoughts and get more into, like, there's so much that we can say about each of those ideas, about the thinking that went into it. This is the culmination of years of a collaboration since 2023, basically, that SGS and I first started on with the Writing and Manifesto for Now, which maybe you're familiar with. And then this project was very much a direct descendant to that writing and thinking that personally has been very much radicalized the way that I think. And the last thing I'll just say is, like, as an ESL speaker, it bothers me so much that the word CORPS, you don't pronounce the P in, you say core. This is very bizarre, but I'll get used to it.
Do we have a second, Adrian? Are we okay for time?
You have 14 minutes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So I can say goodbye.
Okay. Yeah. Shabnam.
I just asked, have you heard back from the Prime Minister?
Not yet.
But he'll get around. He's just busy.
Not yet. Just before we take questions, I was just wondering, Owais, if you could just maybe speak briefly about how we understand abundance, because there's a couple of essays in there, but just to, yeah.
So basically the idea of abundance that we're channeling in this work is inspired directly from a book written recently by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson in the States. It has caused quite a stir in the conversation in the States. There's lots of strong opinions about it either way. And at the time that it came out was very fortuitous for us, because we were looking for a philosophical framework of trying to understand what it is that we were trying to say that was different. And as you can tell from the writing here, I think one of the things that was really interesting for me about the challenge of this is, what is a constructive, generative conversation with a conservative leadership about culture, where we don't rely on a deficit model of coming to this from a kind of how do we protect what we have, and very much actually a lot of the advocacy efforts had been until that point of, like, please don't cut anything, and why don't you take the CBC and leave us alone. Like, it was very afraid, fear-based kind of advocacy, and we wanted to actually have a conversation about, well, what could we do with a completely different set of premises and openness to ideas, and what was, I think, equally inspiring to us about the abundance framework is that it allowed us to imagine that it would be possible maybe that we could have something better than what we have today if we were willing to actually engage in the activity of imagining a new way of doing things. And it also allowed us to really shift our focus from, oh, we need more money, which is basically the kind of perennial challenge that everyone is always facing with. But speaking from experience of having been to Ottawa a few times and having done the dance, starting with we need more money is a really great way to end listening, because they hear that all the time, and it's not actually a very compelling message. And I am actually at the point now where I genuinely don't believe it's actually true. So never mind the fact that it doesn't work, but it's also maybe actually not helping us, because we actually have had record levels of investment over the last few years, and there's all kinds of challenges that we didn't address with that money. So the idea and the core idea in Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson's Book of Abundance is basically that some of the values of progressivism has led to an over fixation on process that has actually countered the actual goals of progressivism in order to provide more housing, more transport, better services for the very people that progressivism tries to support. And an abundance mindset would be trying to unleash all the possible goods into the world by being much more aggressive about product rather than being fixated on perfect process. So this shift, I think, is something that maybe could be very useful for us in the Canadian cultural sector, because we also have quite a bit of fixation on process over outcomes. And some of the outcomes that we try to really hone in on here are like, what do we want for Canadians? Because from a government perspective, and this is who our audience is, the sector itself is like a very, very tiny constituency. But 40 million Canadians is the point. So what do those people need as outcomes, and how are we in service to them, rather than, hey, here's a sector that needs protecting, serving, saving, et cetera, which has been traditionally the language of advocacy.
That was great. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I know you know I'm a fan, and Owais mentioned the Manifesto for Now, which I did assign to all of my graduate students in the Arts Leadership Program here at Queen's last year. So I also just want to say, I feel like this is kind of connected to the previous presentation, because, you know, I came from the blogosphere, I guess is a true statement. And there used to be like so much more writing and ideas and discourse, and algorithms seem to have like taken like just the ability to talk about these things away from us a bit. It seems like, I don't know what metadata we need to keep this in the discussion as well, but it's a kind of related question for me. I picked up a couple of things that both of you said. I want to try to understand if the proposal is, because there's the one idea is that we don't need more money, which comes from the abundance, and I really appreciate that kind of refining of the abundance definition for this conversation. And there's also within the words we see right behind us, this idea that we spend a lot of money on maintaining things. That's like a lot of money goes to just maintaining things from the past. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a proposal for participatory community budgeting. Mm-hmm. So if I try to connect the dots of those three, are we kind of saying like we would let like a community get together and be like the Ottawa community could be like, we don't want to fund the symphony the way we used to? Like there's some hard conversations we proposing communities have with our institutions, which, hey, might go better than us. End of thought.
Yes. I think
so because you know often what happens with these is like, whoa, there's a little bit more in the project fund for all of you, but we're talking about putting it all.
It's insidious than that, I would say, in that the way that the funding models are set up right now, there is a default bias that preserving what we already have, whatever that is automatically a virtue. So because we have inequitable distribution of funding, larger institutions get larger shares of funding, older institutions get larger shares of funding, wider institutions get larger shares of funding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a default status quo bias that says, and I'm saying this as someone who's been on every jury there is to be on every level. One of my favorite experiences was right after the pandemic. I was on an operating jury, and we came into the room and they were like, just so you know, we're going to do the whole thing, the whole dance. You're going to read everything, you're going to take all the comments, but everybody's frozen, so nobody's going to get cut. And I asked the question, I was like, why are we doing the jury then? Like, what's the point? They're like, oh, because they need the feedback. And I was like, to do what? There's no actual incentive. And they're like, don't worry, next year we'll look at it again. Next year they also had it frozen again. And the best part is not that. It's a 3-year committee, and it takes 3 years in order to go through from warning to second warning to then a small cut before you can actually cut somebody from operating funding. Like, the system is so unbelievably corrupted in favor of preservation that even if everybody on the jury was like, this is no good, which, by the way, it never happens because jury members find it really hard actually or committee members find it really hard to actually cut one of their own because everybody's hurting and everybody needs a job and this person's been working for 30 years and he's, yes, he said some problematic things in the past, but this poor old white guy also, what's his retirement plan? And like, I feel for him, but the system has set itself up in such a way that preserves, it's very kind of union mentality where like once you're in it, you're really good, but if you're not in it, we despise you basically. So that preservation mindset is so deeply rooted in the structure of the funding that I think the only thing that would actually disrupt that would actually have diversity of voices that are not the same self-interested parties. And never mind the like higher level of cultural advocacy conversations, which the leaders of the largest institutions go to Ottawa and have the conversations and say, you know what, arts needs more funding for the ballet because we're here representing the arts. And so you just continue perpetuating the same cycles and there's never actually an opportunity to have a completely different outcome. So exactly, to your point, what would it look like if the people in communities, and by communities I don't mean just like the artists who are not included, because I know those people would love to have a say, but there's also just the people outside of those, the supposed audiences that are not actually getting a say in where they want to see their tax dollars go to use. Of course, please.
Yeah, and also in opposition to that, because there's preservation and then there's sustainability. And we don't fund, or there's no funding structure in place right now to fund ongoing operations of quote unquote new things or things that are operating. So there's money for infrastructure, bricks and mortar, there's money for the new projects, there's money for the bright and shiny things, but there isn't money actually designated for real operations. There's money for survival, but not for like the actual operations of buildings that cost money, especially now in this moment where hard costs have risen, exponentially. And so I think it ties to the kind of decision-making that ends up happening, which is the decision-making of scarcity or poverty, because the leaders in these institutions are literally impoverished and don't have the mental space, the cultural space to really engage with the shifting ecologies, the new ideas. And so I think there's also an underpinning of a structural problem within the way we choose to fund, because there's a fear that if we fund heating, that people will get really upset because it's not funding art. But artists and audiences need to be warm. Pipes need not to freeze. Like, there's all those kinds of questions, and I think those need to be foregrounded. And I believe through a participatory budgeting framework and conversation, those conversations could actually be more foregrounded because everyone is living either renting or in a home or caring for. So there's a broader understanding, I think, of what's required.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I wonder if you have thought at all about how your work is formally a performance. And I'm thinking about this as a person who's been studying kind of the ways that artists engage with politicians in particular. Thinking about, I don't know if are familiar with Chris Lloyd's work, that he had a long series called Dear Prime Minister, which lasted for 15 years, where he wrote every day to. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that you're copying. I'm just saying that it's interesting to think about what you're doing in a kind of a longer history of artistic engagement with politicians. And in his case, it was more like a performance artist taking the piss out of the Conservative Party. But there is something interesting, like when we heard people laugh when you said, we'd love to have dinner with you. I actually don't think it's preposterous to be asking to have dinner with one of our politicians. And I think Owais, I've seen maybe on Facebook that you have relationships with politicians, that you have been engaging with political parties. And just if you could talk a little bit about what it means for this to be seen as a performance that's durational, and then what it means, yes, you're not getting a response from the politicians, but in what way would you, what do you want the impact of this to be? Do you want this to remain within the artistic community? Would you like to be thinking about how those connections can be made? Do you want to be part of a future election discourse? Any thoughts on that?
I'll just say two things quickly and then pass it to Owais. One, we talk a lot about performance as part of what we're doing, that it's an online opportunity to express and to have made a decision to collaborate together to put something out there. And of course, it harkens back to the beginnings of Spiderweb show and thinking about everything that's written online as a performance. It's all a digital footprint, but it's also a performance in the making. So that's been very much a part of what we were thinking about, but we weren't thinking about it as ephemeral in so much to say that I don't think it's preposterous either. We haven't had dinner with Mark Carney yet. That's really ... Yeah, exactly. And the day we put it out, the MP rather from Kingston, who did get elected, did get in touch to say, we're really interested in this. Can you send everything along? Whether anything happens with that, who knows? But it did actually make it through the algorithm, which was shocking, because that is a big part of, I think, what we're facing is we're not actually getting out nearly as widely as it would be great to get out. So, but over to you.
Yeah, I think the performativity of it was definitely something that we were interested in and trying to subtly play with as well in a lot of the writing, and realizing that there's multiple audiences also happening simultaneously. And one of the things that we struggled with a lot was like wanting to genuinely engage with the task of that the Prime Minister of Canada might read this, but also accepting the fact that our LinkedIn connections are mostly going to be arts and culture workers, and playing to both audiences simultaneously at the layers of what they think and care about on a daily basis. But I absolutely think that, like, from the very beginning, for me, the goal with this particular project was that it needs to be read by a non-arts audience for it to have the meaning that I want it to have. And I absolutely feel entitled to have dinner with Mark Carney if he pays. Like, as long as he's good for that, then I would totally sit down with him. And if not ourselves, I think the one thing that we didn't put out there or have as a goal is like ourselves to be the arbiters of, make us the next, czars of arts and culture for the country. It was less of a job application for us and more of a, let's spark a conversation publicly. And if there is an opening that we can then use to bring new ideas through, then let's see what comes of that, with less of a long-term strategy, frankly, of like what we would do with that opening.
Hey guys, I just want to thank you as an American to be reading this. It's very profound right now, and it's not really a question, it's just like a thank you of being able to sit here and read this at a moment of great scarcity model in America and what it has gotten us to. And just an observation of this that is why this feels profound to me is it's really looking at a bottom up. The foundation is the people, and the foundation is local, and the foundation is community, where those words are buzzwords. They're not real words in America. And it's just making me think about this fight for the arguments around DEI in America right now, which actually is the symptom of the last round of NEA last year requested DEI topics, and everyone said, we do it, and maybe 5% of them actually practiced it. And now the stripping of that is, and it's just like this top-down mentality where I actually, just connecting to what Jay was saying too, the lack of visibility of what actual organizations and actual people are actually doing in America is completely non-existent. And everyone is just claiming they do these things and they do these practices because they need $1,000, and that's how much is dropping down. So reading this is just such an amazing manifesto that is so invisible in America right now. It makes me tear up, and it's a really beautiful. Is this online? Is this accessible? Okay, great, thank you. That's my question. What's up?
CreateCanada.ca.
Okay, Create Canada, awesome. Thank you guys, really.
I'm trying not to feel validated by a voice from the U.S. right now. I'm like, he likes it, he really likes it.
We made it.
Thank you both so much. Oh, no, stay where you were. Yeah. I'm just here briefly for a moment to say thank you to the two of you. Thank you to Zach, to everybody, to all Sukhdev, to Ronnie, I'm sorry, Jay back there. Thank you to everybody for coming and sharing your work, sharing your thoughts, and to those who listened and shared your words. That is it for now. So that's all, folks.
Thank you. We'll talk off the record.